askreddit. Redditors who made a lot of money by sheer randomness. What's your story? I bought a waterproof camera back in 2010 and thought it would be cool to try it out at the new water park that just opened. 1 year later the video blew up, making me tons of money monthly. I still make some during the summer months but not much. Now I'm sitting at just over 100 million views. In the 90s I fostered a dog for some friends who were leaving town and left the dog with me. This dog immediately made an impression upon me, and even though I really didn't want a pet at the time, he was such an amazing dog, he convinced me otherwise. He was super smart, half black lab, half pit bull. I called him Wisdom because he was so smart. Fast forward a few years, I used him as a mascot for a recording studio I set up. I registered the domain name wisdom.com. My dog passed away several years later and I was heartbroken and depressed for many years. I maintained the domain name even though I didn't really have any projects associated with it. Over the years people made offers on the domain name but I always passed. The domain was a homage to my long-lost best friend. Then in 2000 with the .com boom, there was renewed interest in domains and IPOs. I had a few groups bugging me for the domain name and kept increasing their offers. Eventually the numbers got into the life-changing areas of money, and I couldn't ignore them. I originally secured the wisdom.com domain name for nothing. In the early days of the internet, it didn't cost any money to register a domain name. You just had to fill out the right forms. I actually would never have to pay any domain renewal fees if it wasn't for a sysadmin that made changes to the domain and accepted new terms of service that forced me to have to pay renewal fees. Otherwise, the $475,000 I was ultimately offered in cash would have been pure profit. But instead my cost was a few $100s over the year. Still a significant windfall that gave me the opportunity to take that money and create another cool community of wonderful people. I continued to be in awe that my little dog, Wisdom, had the ability to bestow such an amazing gift upon me so many years later, and I'm determined to use that gift to help others. I took the money to create a special space that is a makerspace and club to help others. My neighbor died with no friends or family and left everything in her will to us. Everyone always asks if we were great neighbors to her. I'd say no, we were just neighbors and treated her as we would want to be treated and did neighborly duties for her. If it snowed we cleared her driveway without her asking, took care of her cats if she went to the beach, say hello if we saw her. She was a tough cookie and an alpha female, would be the best way to put it. She hated if I played basketball in the driveway, and when we were cleaning out her garage after she died we found 3 of my old basketballs. But she was also the type of person if she wanted an apple pie she would bake an apple pie and take a slice and bring the rest over to us. My wife's aunt died. She had been institutionalized her whole life and neither of us had ever even met her. We kind of forgot about it for a few months until my wife's uncle emailed her and said she was going to be getting some money. We were like, oh, okay, that's kinda weird, but not complaining. Then my wife got a phone call from the uncle one evening. I heard a lot of ums, okays, and gees, wows. Turned out we were getting over $300,000. We were both grinding away making $15 an hour and barely making rent every month. And then boom. Out of nowhere. That ended up being the difference between having a house and not having a house, being able to start a family and not being able to start a family, and having a retirement fund versus just hoping not to get evicted every month. I briefly worked with a guy who was in his late 20s, ex-military. When he got out, a friend of his he served with told him to buy Bitcoin. He bought several thousand worth when it was nothing and forgot about it. When it first started spiking and getting attention on the news, he started looking for the drive because he thought he had some. He didn't, he had a lot of it. Sold well before the peak. Dude made millions. He had an $800,000 house, multiple high-end cars and came to work a manual labor job because he was bored. Needless to say, he didn't stay long and all he did was show off his money and clock hours not actually working. I started an Amazon private label business on a whim in 2015. I made about 25% of the sale in profit after product, shipping, and advertising costs. Sales doubled every month for 6 months: June $4,000, July $8,000, August $18,000, September $40,000, October $84,000, November $175,000, December $362,000. I didn't know what to do. I quit my job in January to focus on growing the business, but my time was spent mostly trying to fend off competition copying my listing and posting fraudulent reviews and then lowering my price in the race to the bottom. It went well for a few years, but I never made as much as I made that first December. Lesson learned: arbitrage isn't a long-term business. When I was 17, about to turn 18, my mom told me to open a bank account because I was going to get around $500–600 from my dad. Opened the bank account, signed the papers she needed me to, and got a whopping $15,400 deposited into my bank at 18 years old. 2 years ago, 22 at this point, come to find out he gets a huge settlement for a car accident, I think? And get another $15K dispersed over 2.5 years. I'd if it was back child support or what, but I was really blessed. My previous employer eliminated my position, our whole department actually. I got a severance of 1 year which worked out to be 22 weeks of salary. Not only that, I got paid a bonus to stay on for the last 3 months. After that was over, I got a job with a competitor company making the exact same salary and doing mostly the same job. Started the very next Monday. I actually even like working for the new company better. I don't know how random that really was, but it sure felt like a real fortunate way to lose a job. I had an aunt that was basically excommunicated from my family for reasons that still are unclear to me. I was super young when the falling out happened, 4 or 5. She was married to some super old guy who was oil wealthy, and inherited his fortune when he passed. When I was 23 she passed, and crazily enough I was her favorite. She liked me, and in her letter left to me, I was the son she never had. I remember the way she used to play hide and seek with me but nothing else. It makes me sad that she was kicked out of the family, and she seemed to have really though a lot of young me. She left me $2.4 million. I've always in the back of my mind tried to make her proud of me, cause she was the cool hide and seek aunt I never really knew. I was celebrating my 20th birthday. Decided to go to the nice casino an hour away from campus with my then boyfriend. We played bingo because that's what I could afford and it occupied some time. We lost. I called my dad. He loves casinos when he has the money to go. He told me to play 3-card poker. I had watched him play before but I didn't know how and was on my last $20 to my name. He told me that would be enough for a hand or two and just give it a shot. The dealer would explain the rules. So I sat at the table by myself. I won. The dealer was really excited for me, but I was pretty clueless. I had a straight flush. Then I just kept winning. People would take the seat in front of me, they would lose, I'd win. Didn't matter. Got 2 more straight flushes that night and lots of other good hands. I kept betting the minimum, wish I was putting down more. I turned $20 into $3K that night. My dad didn't believe me. I loaned a friend $12K to buy inventory to sell flea and tick meds for pets online in the early 2000s. He did really well and went on to make tons of money doing it. He paid me back in like 6 months and sent me checks for $1K a month, as a thank you for going on 15 years now. I made him stop recently because I don't need it. It's a pain to account for on my taxes and he's paid me like 10x back for the loan lol. I was a male escort for about 7-ish years. Not a hooker, specifically an escort. I would go with people, usually women, but sometimes men, and would pretend to be their perfect boyfriend, partner in front of friends and family, co-workers. It started out very much as an accident but ended up making me a ton of money. I recently retired and started focusing on going to school cause I can't do escorting my whole life, and nor did I want because I really dislike people and it was honestly a chore. Most of my clients were 1% percenters, which is the reason I made so much money. I did pay taxes on it before anyone asks. My last employer before I retired was matching 25% of whatever I contributed to my 401k. I maxed out that bitch every year even when it got to be over 30% of my salary. Most of my workmates were contributing like 3 to 5% and I couldn't for the life of me convince them that 25% plus whatever appreciation was the best deal they'd ever see in their lives. I retired at age 62 and my wife retired soon after at age 55. Our advisor predicts a 99% chance that we'll be able to maintain our very comfortable current lifestyle for the rest of our lives even if my wife lives to 100. My former workmates, probably not so much. Got adopted by the two best people in the world when I was 4 months old. They did everything they could to raise me and set me on the right path. I have a pretty amazing life. Great job, fantastic wife, comfortable life, great friends. Pretty much owe everything to a random event where I was the kid who got paired with my parents. Side note, I recently found my birth family and discovered I have an older brother who was not put up for adoption. To see his life and what he had to endure is very hard for me. I hit the jackpot and I am thankful every day. I was on a business trip that passed through Lake Tahoe. 3 people in one hotel room, so I went down to the casino to get some space. Couldn't find a blackjack table to lose my $100 at, so I sat down at a Wheel of Fortune slot machine instead. 10 minutes later, I'm absent-mindedly pressing the spin max bet and hit the progressive jackpot. $1.1 million. It's the sort of thing you assume never happens, but it did. Took a lump payment of $690,000, which after I pay taxes next week will end up being about $390,000. I quickly got a financial advisor, bought my car, now own a couple investment properties, and bought my now wife her ring. Everything else is quite literally the exact same, except I have an epic story to tell to strangers on Reddit.